Cordoba, and today I'll be sharing my experiences with you of sound designing and composing for films. Today we'll be starting with the script, a very important dramatic tool from which to extract all the necessary information needed to compile the amount of sounds that will end up in post-production. So a sound designer becomes an extension of the dramatic aspect. So within that context, sound becomes part of the story. So how do we find out which and the specifics in the script? We read it many times. We talk to the director or the screenwriter many times and try to figure out how we're going to enhance, which is, I think, the proper word, enhance the world and bring it to specifics. Okay, so I'll read out the script. The opening credits of the film are presented over the misty landscape. The sound of the river and animals can be heard in the distance. The mist moves from one place to another, making the credits fade, and the credits fade out, and the next credits appear. It is late afternoon on the mountain, but due to the thick mist, it is difficult to tell the time. Mist. It is difficult to tell the time, but soon we distinguish the sound of a river mixing with the wind as we hear the voice of a man shouting. We hear the voice of a man approaching, shouting loudly, "Lucila! Lucila!"
¡Lucila! ¡Hop! 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 ¡Lucila!
We see parts of the screaming man's body, but not his face. He's dressed in worn clothes, typical of work in the fields. He wears rubber boots. He's carrying a rifle, and he screams again, "Lucila!" After a while, his figure fades into the gray blanket of mist. Through the clouds, the figure of Victor reappears, who walks, making his way with his rifle. He mumbles words as his head turns from side to side. He's about to shout again when he's interrupted by the sound of a horse's hooves, pounding on the stones. Victor, 60, turns hastily. His face is bony and wiry. His beard and the hardness of his countenance make him look like a Robinson Crusoe. Sucio was a film recorded in Costa Rica in a rural area. Before we went on location, we decided to, besides recording all the ambience, record all the Foley on set so that we could add all the, all the parts that make up all the scenes. The location mixer, he created a sound report with all the different internal room tones and the external ambience, the river and so on, so that you can have different options. Sound is divided in departments. So the sound designer's role is to supervise all the departments involved. The first department involved is the Department of Dialogue. And the Department of Dialogue is whose job is to bring in all the location sound to basically separate all those channels that are acquired, recorded at the locations, and synchronize them properly with the scenes. It's important to know that just like film scoring in itself takes a tremendous amount of resources, in this specific project, I think we have about 250 or more channels involved. So I'm going to show you the session of a documentary I'm working on, which is pretty much finished within the stereo universe, and we've been showing it in different platforms at the moment. So, but it's pretty much done. So here is okay, from top to bottom. What we see on the top here, it's all dialogue, and I would say that I'm going to narrow this so we can see it better. Okay, so what I do is I open up many channels. In this case, what you're seeing is all dialogue. From within dialogue recorded in the set, much of this dialogue was a voiceover, and much of it was also documentary style. So the first AUX that you see here in VCA, it's a group. So this helps me do many things. One, I like to apply in the channel, in the specific channel, for example here, apply a specific noise reduction, which of course does a specific suppression of harmonics, as you may very well know, or if you don't know, that's exactly what it does. Suppression of harmonics. So that helps correcting situations where we have some type of noise in a frequency that we wish to subdue, for example. Or here we have a EQing a specific type of frequency. So here I'm just giving it a bit of a little brighter tone, and so on. And so what I do is I take all that group, which is the dialogue group, which in here I got about 60 channels, and I do exactly that. Apply, route that, of course, to the main bus, main outlet. And what I do is before it goes there, I apply compressor, etc. So here is we do give it center, so that we have the idea, we simulate the idea that we have a very mono type of center in the dialogue, which is extremely important to have. So even within the context of stereo, so as I mentioned before, dialogue is very important to isolate in the middle, and you can do other things, to other stuff like music or effects and stuff, and play around with the dimension of where it exists in the space and time. But basically, it's a modeling of where you put it. Dialogue, you want it in the center, so that's where you want it. The second department that we have here is the ambience department, and right here we go from channel 62 to this is the first ambience, channel 85. Ambiance's environmental recordings are done in stereo rather than in mono, but there are times where we do use mono recordings to highlight a specific effect or something that we want to highlight. So instead of having a wider capture, we have a narrower, more focused recording. Okay, then the next department is ambience effects, I call it, which are basically synchronized backgrounds, right? And they may include thunder, winds, water, birds, cascades, or waterfalls, whatever environments we layer upon the other environments that are more silent or soundscapes.
Desde Penonomé hasta Coclecito hay 11 minutos de vuelo. No hay forma de que en un intervalo tan corto nos sorprenda el mal tiempo. A los 5 minutos de haber despegado, se debe poder ver el aeropuerto de Coclecito. Es como si nos cogiera una tormenta cruzando una calle. Puede que cruzando una plaza, pero no una calle. 5 minutos de vuelo son una calle, no una plaza.
For example, flaps. Okay, when you don't have things layered, then you can't go back and precisely separate or enhance or or on the contrary duck something below something else. So to have control, we need many layers and many channels, and that is something that you will find very important for the sound design. Now the fourth part is the effects, which are some naturalistic effects, right? That are created through synthesizers, or more plastic, synthetic environments, and others. So I separate my effects between the naturalistic effects and the synthetic effects, and I do the same. Now, all of those effects, if I apply a reverb to them, those reverbs are going to be applied on the channels themselves.
Lo que Occidente considera inexplicable es el reflejo de su incapacidad de entender el pensamiento del otro. Mi padre falleció un domingo en la madrugada, el 10 de septiembre del 2018. Nunca nos despedimos. Rebelde ante la muerte, nunca la aceptó.
And so next on my list, of course, between like score and there's what I call the hybrids, and the hybrids are something that I am very interested in particularly because I do a lot of hybrids for films and series. So I extend the musical into the sound design terrain to sort of glue everything together so that it sticks to the screen organically. Those textures can be, of course, synthetically derived from synthesizer libraries and of many kinds, and the ones that you create. And basically, it all starts up here in the imagination. You have to start hearing what you want to accomplish. It has to be an organic, complete organic process that's how it becomes. It becomes a second nature, and that second nature is it starts in the inner ear, and then you accomplish that within the tools, through contact, libraries, and whatever you're interested in, whether it's synths, Moogs, whatever your if you are keyboard oriented, loving person like myself, I love Rhodes, and I love the Oberheim, and I love the DX7, and I love many different sounds. So I try to collect, sounds from the Korg libraries and Roland, etc., etc. So I try to collect the majority of sounds that I can that are organic, that sound properly, and that can be layered, and but in the context of textures, it's a very interesting thing because it works really well with science fiction, and the magical realms and suspense, in the suspense with tensions, you create and layer things. So you start hearing what you're missing, and so I act as a hybrid between the music department and, as the supervising sound designer. I try to fill in the gaps, with much respect to the music, and much respect, of course, to the dialogue, the ambiance, and effects, and the Foley, and everything else. So that's that for the elements that are part of the sound design. The fifth ingredient in the sound designer's palette is the Foley. Foley stands for the re-recording of sounds such as clothing, chairs, breathing, steps, and also other sounds that may be in the language of close-ups that need to be heard, of course, and it has to be done maybe in the outdoors or in a studio. So normally much of it is done indoors, and to recreate steps within ice, water, dry terrain that may be gravel, stone. So much of it is really a creation, and it's a creation that requires much imagination and skill, and it's a job that in film it's one of the most important jobs, the Foley work. And then we go into the music department, of course, which we can divide in several departments, let's say. Everything we need to receive within open, not premixed, although the premixing of stems is ideal in the sense that we get a group of channels, mono channels, that have their correspondent stereo mix, just for reference. But we need to be able to put all of those mono, the ingredients together, so we can separate whatever. Now, there are, of course, different types of music within the incidental category. Underscoring. There is working around dialogue. There are musics that sometimes are diegetic, which means that they have a source, and so there are source created or not. And of course there are musics that are completely extract, that come from the mind or the subjective. And so we work with music that have very different behaviors. Okay, so those musics will provide the emotional sometimes, and sometimes provide the situational, environmental, or geographical, or will help just transition scenes, etc. So music has many different behaviors and purposes. We can basically go through our mixer. I have the location sound. Then I have the DX, which is the dialogue, which I have everything that I showed you before. 46 channels of dialogue from, location, voiceovers, ADR, and whatever. Then we have Ambiance, all that's grouped in a AUX and a BC2 bus, which helps me group everything and then be able to control with one fader. So I group everything and control with one fader, just like in the old days. Then I have Ambiance, and then Ambiance, this is in different types of Ambiance effects, like as I mentioned before. Then we have the music department, and the music department, of course, has different tracks, which in this case are pre-mixed, because we were still deciding music tracks after pretty much the last day. So a lot of it still has to be opened up before the mix. So I have to resynchronize everything. Now, the next thing that I haven't spoken about is stems, which basically what we do is group all those departments into individual channels that make up a smaller mixer, and can also be controlled and rewritten in terms of time, to re-record things, the automation, so that when the scene is it's happening, everything moves, gives proper levels. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the sound department, how it's divided in modern terms. Of course, everybody does differently, but this is a very common way. So here we have Foley, and we have paths, which are textures that I spoke about, which are added and in case they're needed. And then we have stems, which are everything grouped together. I'm going to play so you can see the signals. So everything ends up in these channels, and then subsequently I can route them any way I like. Remember that the job of a sound designer stems from the dramatic aspect, is an extension of the dramatic aspect. So our job primarily is to help to tell the story. So everything that we do, we are trying to help to tell the story and to add to that story. So it's very important for us to become aware of that and to understand that we are as composers and sound designers, sound composers, our job is to create and to finalize and to produce in the best of our ability, and to also learn to improve in technical and creative ways. And we also borrow a lot from the masters. We borrow from the visual language. So there's many things that we borrow from the painters and the masters. When we speak about tonality, we speak in terms of the visual language applied to our oral language. So we are borrowing those concepts and we are adapting them to our reality. But in many ways, our job is a hybrid. We are hybrids. And in terms of the working specifically for films, that's what we do. We create things when we create works on demand, and we must inform ourselves, in ways that help us realize our job instinctively, creatively, and technically. It's been a pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you.
Los días antes de su muerte, estuve todo lo que pude a su lado. Habían silencios demasiado largos. Yo los intentaba interrumpir con algún tema que le pudiera interesar. Uno de ellos lo encontré en una revista que sacó un número especial sobre Copérnico y su obra, La revolución de las esferas. A mi papá le fascinaba este personaje que había logrado sacar a la Tierra del centro del universo. En sus textos, Copérnico demuestra que la Tierra es esférica. Yo le comentaba a mi papá lo que Ifigenia me había hecho entender. Las esferas no solamente ocuparon un lugar importante en el pensamiento griego occidental, sino que los indígenas también manejaban conceptos abstractos. Las esferas, al haberse convertido en un enigma, muchas teorías asignan su creación a los extraterrestres, lo cual es una idea cargada de prejuicio. Lo que Occidente considera inexplicable es el reflejo de su incapacidad de entender el pensamiento del otro. Mi padre falleció un domingo en la madrugada, el 10 de septiembre del 2018. Nunca nos despedimos. Rebelde ante la muerte, nunca la aceptó. Esa discusión sobre Copérnico fue de las últimas que tuvimos. Después de su muerte, me persiguieron muchas imágenes de los últimos momentos en el hospital. Yo misma buscaba esas imágenes, como para convencerme de lo sucedido. El cuerpo se vuelve un objeto, una imagen aterradora. A veces aún regreso a ese lugar. Estos objetos son los restos que me quedaron de mi papá. El sobre con sus fotos, un collar que me trajo de un viaje y un suéter verde que le pedí a su esposa. Recuerdo el día que se lo vi puesto.